Tonight, friends and neighbors don't know what to make of a deadly weekend shooting that happened at a home in their community.
To look out and see what happened, like it's just, I was in shock. I say, I'm still in shock. I still haven't sunk in.
It's a horrible tragedy that has shaken the small town of Little Burnt Bay. We'll have the latest on the weekend homicide coming up on Here and Now.
I told him I'm calling you from the ICU unit in St. John's, and Gerard is not going to recover. He passed away from his injuries.
To me, somebody is dragging their heels.
Documents reveal why some employers may have gotten off the hook for serious accidents on the job. We'll bring you a special CBC investigation.
The annual energy conference is underway here in St. John's, and this time it's bigger than ever. Still anchored by oil, but also energized by renewables.
We are so fortunate to have oil, wind, carbon capture storage potential, salt domes, and hydroelectricity. So we're so fortunate to have it all.
I'm Terry Roberts. That story coming up.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan, filling in for Carolyn. A small town in central Newfoundland is reeling after a deadly shooting. 57-year-old Richard Wareham is charged with killing Kenny Wareham. People in Little Burnt Bay are remembering their 36-year-old neighbor as friendly and generous. Here and Now's Troy Turner has our top story.
A heavy fog set in over Little Burnt Bay this morning. The streets are quiet, as well as the wharf. Maple Street is empty, except for the police waiting outside this home. This house used to belong to Kenny Wareham's grandfather. He moved in a couple years ago. It's a crime scene now, the perimeter outlined in yellow tape.
And now I'll go back in there, past his house and not see him there. It's going to be strange. So, I don't know. I don't know. It's just unthinkable.
Herma Baker grew up next door on Maple Street. She is also a distant cousin of Wareham's and knew him since he was born.
It's not sunk in yet. It's just like I was just talking to him the day before. He was up on the roof cleaning his chimney, and we just said a little joke like we always do. The day before that, I was in by his house talking with his dog, and he came out. We had a good old chat. So it's just something that just an ordinary scene, and going back and forth the lane, going to work. Just in the wintertime, you come plow my snow, and just wouldn't even know nothing about it, talking about it would be all plowed. That's just the type of fellow that he was, right?
This small, close-knit town is reeling over this incident.
If he needed something and he had it, you could have it. He's very friendly, outgoing. He talked to anybody. It's devastating. I mean, especially to the family. I mean, like I said, and everybody in the community. I mean, they lived there for all their lives, so everybody knew him.
Police were called to the house just after 9 p.m. Sunday. The RCMP says it's working to piece together a timeline of what happened that night.
Our officers would be looking to gather any pertinent information. Maybe it was a conversation that was overheard. Maybe it was suspicious activity that was observed. Anybody having any information about this crime is asked to contact the RCMP Major Crimes Unit.
The accused, Richard Wareham, was in Gander Provincial Court this afternoon for a bail hearing on the manslaughter charge.
Police say Wareham is related to the victim, and he has a criminal record in Ontario. The appearance lasted only a couple minutes and is being set over until Wednesday. Back on Maple Street, people are thinking of the family.
A lot of unanswered questions, people not knowing why it happened. You know, what was a senseless act? I mean, someone to kill a young man at that age, I mean, to kill anybody, but a young man, I mean, just got a little girl, I mean, that he dotes on, he loves his daughter. She's not going to understand why this happened or why her dad is not around, or she's only like a little girl, right?
This is a close-knit community where friends and neighbors are like family. People here tell me they are still in shock over this incident, and this community has likely changed forever. Troy Turner, CBC News, Little Burnt Bay.
A Mountie has been given a conditional discharge and 12 months probation for pointing his police firearm at a woman while off duty. Michael Wheeler was at a social gathering drinking alcohol at the time of the incident. It happened on Bell Island back in 2018. Today, Justice Sandra Chater said there was a substantial risk of serious injury and didn't believe Wheeler showed remorse for what happened. But the judge also noted that Wheeler is a first-time offender who's been diagnosed with PTSD. She says his record as a police officer was otherwise exemplary and included past recognition for saving lives. Wheeler is suspended without pay from the RCMP. Tonight, we have a story about how serious workplace accidents are investigated in this province and the findings of an internal audit. The review suggests some employers may have escaped charges because investigations weren't finished on time. Ariana Kelland has more on how revelations from this review are hitting home for someone who lost a loved one.
It was at this work site in Stephenville that Gerard Drover was fatally injured when he was struck by a ceiling fan.
Yeah, one of my best friends and my first cousin. We're the same age, of course, we grew up together.
Marty Gregory knows both sides of workplace safety, as a relative of someone who died on the job and as president of commercial construction company Roth Loxton.
Our responsibility is to someone who's working in our organization to go home safe to their family at the end of the day.
Through access to information, CBC News obtained an internal audit of how the province does investigations into serious workplace accidents. It identified a number of issues. Officer workloads combined with staff turnover are impacting the OH&S division's ability to complete investigations, reviews, and related reports in a timely manner prior to the expiration of the 2-year statutory deadline. The review also found outdated investigative processes, and the Standard Operating Procedures Manual for Investigations dated back to 2010 and was still in draft form.
Having gone through my experience with my friend and my family member, I can't say I'm surprised. It's very disappointing, obviously.
Not only were charges being laid right under the wire, the audit says at least 1/4 of investigations surveyed over a 2-year period weren't finished in time, meaning no charges could be laid. No one from the department that oversees OH&S would do an interview, but a spokesperson said it requested the review in July of 2020 and it was finished 2 years later and resulted in 11 recommendations. The department has fully implemented a few of the more straightforward ones, like creating a spreadsheet to keep tabs on investigations and having regularly scheduled meetings. A new investigations unit has been approved, but the department provided no timeline for that to actually happen. Work on the bulk of the recommendations remains in progress. But take a look at these recent press releases, and the timeliness of OH&S laying charges appears to still be an issue. In 2022, a worker fell from a roof in Botwood. Charges were laid exactly 2 years to the month later. One worker was injured when he was struck by a piece of lumber in Trinity Bay. Charges laid again right up to the deadline. Ron Thomas is staff representative for a union which has thousands of members working in this province.
And that audit came out 2 years ago, or close to 2 years ago, and it's still not implemented. So, I mean, to me, somebody is dragging their heels.
This expert says it's time for action.
As I read the report, it's very unfortunate that these gaps exist and that they've persisted for as long as they have.
In Gerard Drover's case, 4 charges were laid against Pomerleau just days before that 2-year deadline. But when it got to court, all but 1 charge was dropped. No reason was given. The judge found the Crown didn't prove its case and dismissed the lone remaining charge.
But at the end of the day, I'd say this, if Gerard's death and the prosecution of his death, from a justice point of view, is a test of the government's ability to do this properly, I'd say they seriously failed.
Gregory says it's too late for his cousin, and it's not about blame, but making it better for other workers on the job. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
I think Newfoundland tourism should just completely switch gears and just be promoting this place as like the set of a horror movie. look like. No special effects needed. Was that lightning? Did you just see that?
Well, be careful what you wish for, Dana. That's local radio personality Dana Parsons poking the bear. She was complaining about the weather this morning from her car when Mother Nature snapped back with a big bang of thunder. Yeah, it has been a really foggy day today. A little bit of a break, though, from that fog, thanks to that little bit of thunderstorm that rolled through earlier today, but we've been right back in it. The reason for that, the culprit, this area of low pressure just to the south, spitting lots and lots of moisture towards the province. Pouring rain for a good chunk of the day today, some more rain moving in now. And the reason why it's staying there is because we've got a ridge of high pressure blocking it from moving out. And it really doesn't look like we're going to see too much in the way of change for a couple of days. Just maybe a bit of sun in the forecast, but we'll certainly talk about that a little later. All the heat up across Labrador. This southerly flow is bringing very summer-like temperatures to parts of the Big Land. Not so much towards the southeast, though you're still hanging on to some onshore flow, cooler temperatures as well. But this is a live shot outside right now. At least there's a harbor back there somewhere. 8 degrees at the moment, visibility down to about 400 meters. We've been sitting around 200 meters for most of the night tonight, or most of the day today, rather. But we got a bit of sunshine. There is some sun. West Coast, South Coast seeing some sunshine as well. We'll talk about what's in store when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. The Premier says he's all in on oil for the foreseeable future. The annual Energy Conference kicked off in St. John's today, and it's bigger than ever. As Here Now's Terry Roberts reports, while oil continues to drive the economy, there's also growing enthusiasm over renewables.
It's a spring ritual in St. John's. Energy enthusiasts gathering in large numbers at the convention center. But no one has ever seen it like this. More than 800 delegates and speakers, 60 exhibitors, and there's never been such an international flavor. That's because oil and gas, while it's still an economic juggernaut, is no longer the only game in town. There's just as much talk about wind turbines and hydrogen as there is about oil production and exploration.
We are so fortunate to have oil, wind, carbon capture storage potential, salt domes, and hydroelectricity. So we're so fortunate to have it all.
The buzz of Newfoundland and Labrador is being felt around the world.
With opportunities so great, the Premier believes an unprecedented era of growth and development is on the horizon, with Newfoundland and Labrador leading a renewable energy revolution.
We are on the cusp of harnessing wind energy to create hydrogen, a global game changer in the energy equation.
A handful of wind to hydrogen projects are slowly advancing, with the promise of billions in investment and thousands of jobs, and hopes of exporting green fuels to countries like Germany. But it's a new and unproven industry. There's only one letter of intent for the purchase of hydrogen from this province, and the players are counting on big subsidies in the early stages to be competitive with fossil fuels.
We were opposed to this because it's not the right area for it.
Not everyone's on board. Nearly a dozen people, mostly from the Port-au-Port area, protested outside today's event.
I don't see anybody in my community that needs a job. Everybody's good.
But this CEO is confident the investments will come and the customers will be there.
Companies are going to have to find a way to secure a source of renewable fuels in order to avoid those penalties and to be in producing responsible products for their customers.
Decades of oil production means the industry casts a big shadow here. Oil accounts for more than 20% of the province's GDP, nearly $1 billion in royalties last year. The offshore's biggest player is planning to invest $1.5 billion this year into Hibernia and Hebron, with the goal of accessing reserves that were previously unreachable.
That really opens our eyes to infill potential from the platform.
And this new ExxonMobil Canada CEO is excited about an ongoing exploration well at a deep water prospect called Persephone in the Orphan Basin. The chances of a discovery are about 10%, but the payoff could be significant.
We are all looking forward to this and, hopefully be able to talk more about that in the coming months.
And while the Premier is excited by renewables, he's not ready to abandon oil.
We will be all in on oil and gas for decades and decades to come.
All the chatter here is about the province's impressive energy mix and how it could power this province to prosperity. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
The provincial government has committed to changing the Crown's lands process, but says it needs more time. Last week, government supported a PC members' resolution calling for changes to the Lands Act. Lawyer Gary French represents a Catalina couple who for years have been fighting for their property after learning it was built on what's considered to be Crown lands. And French says they're not alone. He says it's a growing problem that often goes back centuries in communities that were settled hundreds of years ago.
Land values historically have been quite low in Newfoundland, so historically record keeping of land ownership has been poor. And now, when we're trying to reconcile historical practices and community understandings, we're finding that the government of Newfoundland has a very different view of what is and is not private property. When they're told.
Now, as I mentioned, the province did support changes proposed last week to the Lands Act, but those changes have not come into effect yet. Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture Minister Elvis Lovelace says the government needs more time. Well, last night we introduced you to 3-year-old Ebba. She's one of the 1,600 children in this province considered to be medically complex. The health minister says there are changes in the works to help for care for children with conditions like Ebba's, but a National Children's Healthcare Association says we're in the midst of a crisis. Here now's Jessica Singer brings us this update.
Children's Healthcare Canada represents child healthcare organizations across the country. It released a report calling on the federal government to designate a chief child health officer and focus more resources on child well-being. It says healthcare organizations across the country are facing unprecedented demand, and there's a national shortage of healthcare workers trained to care for children like Ebba.
We are seeing the health outcomes of children and youth in this country worsen year over year, whether it's related to their mental health and well-being or whether it's their physical health. We know by the year 2040 that we will have an additional 1.5 million kids in this country. We're struggling to meet their healthcare needs today, let alone we don't have a plan to meet the needs of an additional 1.2 million kids into the future.
3-year-old Ebba has a rare neurodevelopmental condition called CDKL5. She has vomiting spells, seizures, and is fed through a tube. Her mom says trying to find help to alleviate the burden has been a nightmare. There's a lack of respite and inclusion workers, there are issues with school accessibility, and qualifying for the province's Special Child Welfare Allowance program is lengthy, invasive, and restrictive. There aren't any organizations in the province specifically advocating for caregivers of medically complex children, so families often feel like they're suffering in the shadows.
It's really exhausting and it's disheartening that in 2024, I have to fight for my child to have an education and to have care.
In October, the province's citizens representative released a report offering 12 recommendations to the provincial government to improve care. Health Minister Tom Osborne says a special advisor is meeting with the citizens representative regularly and that there are plans in place to make much needed changes.
I can't speak to the past, but I can speak to the future, and I know that that is something we are focused on, and it is something that families and caregivers are asking for.
Families like Ebba's need help now. As for when they'll see improvements to care, Osborne says sometime in the near future. Jessica Singer, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the provincial government wants to make it easier for charities to get a lottery license. Service NL says starting July 2nd, organizations will be able to get a 2-year license instead of 1. Groups who sell lotteries in annual events will only have to apply for a license every 5 years. There are also changes to made for lottery tickets to be more accessible for online purchases and redemptions, and electronic gaming equipment and raffles are also now allowed.
I believe my parents found it very difficult and unable to adapt to the new surrounding of a house because they were not used to that kind of a building that they were given.
Testimony at the inquiry into Innu children in care covered the difficult experiences of those forced to relocate. We'll hear that from Shehajit coming up.
Another round of heavy showers working its way towards the Avalon at the moment. I'll tell you how long that's going to stick around. There's a glimpse of sun in the forecast. We'll talk about it coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. The absolute final deadline is midnight Friday. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Actually, it feels a bit like the tale of two springs. If you're in St. John's, well, you don't have one, and the rest of the province gets to sort of sit back, enjoy, and maybe have a little bit of schadenfreude.
Yeah, January certainly starting strong here in the east, through parts of central as well. It's just anywhere we're in that onshore flow. Pretty typical of January, though. I think we forget about it every single year, and then it gets here and everybody's upset about it. But yeah, today, not lovely. 9 degrees in St. John's. You head towards central, temperatures a tad warmer than that, 12 to 14 degrees, but still anywhere in that onshore flow, seeing those cooler temperatures, 8 in Bonavista, but head to the west coast, Stephenville in particular, as well as Port aux Basques, 22 degrees this afternoon, so a pretty lovely day. And just, it's basically summer up across Labrador. The hot spot, Lab City, actually just reached this, 27 degrees right now, and there is a lot more warmth where that is coming from, especially over the next couple of days. Temperatures haven't really moved much in St. John's at all from this morning. 8 degrees went down to about 7, but really been hovering around 8 or 9 degrees today. The only difference really is where the winds are coming from. They're not overly strong, but where those winds are coming from, either easterlies or southeasterlies today. And again, as that thunderstorm rolled through earlier today, we did see a bit of relief from that visibility. The visibility did come up to about 2 kilometers for portions of this morning, but we are way back down again. 8 degrees right now in St. John's, as you just saw. Still a beautiful evening in Port aux Basques, 21 degrees. And like I said, that temperature actually still hovering around 27 in Lab City right now. So pretty nice. So what's happening right now is we're in a bit of a stalled, or we are in a stalled pattern. We've got a ridge of high pressure to the north, area of low pressure to the south that is driving all of this moisture and onshore flow, hence this dense fog that we are seeing as well. Unfortunately, this doesn't really change. We may see some southeasterlies as we head into tomorrow that might help with the fog for a little bit, but we're still certainly going to see that into Thursday. Maybe a bit more of a southerly flow that may help as well. It really all depends on the way the winds blow. But certainly it looks like we're going to see a break on Saturday. We'll see more of a northerly flow, although it may be a bit cooler. Those northerly winds should help with the fog through the day. And Sunday at this point, although maybe a little bit up in the air, Sunday into Monday, it looks like we're going to move back into some southerly flow. Unfortunately, that means the south coast will see the fog, but we should see that lift at least a little bit through the first half of Monday. And then really into next week, another area of low pressure moves through, so we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. Right now, we've got another round of heavier showers rolling through right now for eastern Newfoundland. I'll just zoom in there for you. Yeah, so we're basically going to see the heavy rain continue for most of the night tonight. These pulses of rain will move through central and eventually to the west coast as we head towards the morning hours tomorrow. Northern Peninsula, you're going to see some of this heavy rain by the time we get into tomorrow morning as well. Labrador, quite quiet. Onshore flow, though, for the southeast. That means that you're still going to see the chance of some showers or drizzle tonight. Overall, look at that, 12 degrees is your overnight low in Lab City tonight. Otherwise, between 5 to 9 degrees. The island, really, we're not moving too much in the east, 7 or 8 degrees, but you're going to see your temperatures drop on the west coast with northeasterly somewhere between 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Into tomorrow, rain, drizzle, and fog continuing. I do think we'll see more in the way of drizzle and fog for the east until we get into the night, where we'll likely see another round of showers move through. Some of these could be heavy at times as well as we head through the overnight. And again, as this area of low pressure sticks around, it's just going to continue to see these impulses of rain. Now, as far as amounts are concerned, only about 5 to 10 millimeters, but into Thursday, that could bring that amount up to about 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. Temperatures tomorrow, no different than today, really 9 to about 12 or 13 degrees, a little warmer through central. You even may see a few peaks of sun. Won't last long, but you may see them. And then for the upper cross Labrador, again, a beautiful day. Sunshine, 20, 25 degrees, except single digits for the southeast. We'll talk about the long range coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. The inquiry into the treatment of Innu children in care has resumed in Shehajit, and Elder Mary Pia Benowin is sharing her experiences. Benowin says her family was forced to move from a traditional Innu tent into a freezing house with no running water. She says the move contributed to her parents' spiral into alcohol abuse.
And those houses, eventually, in the end, we had to sleep in the kitchen where there was a stove, because the rooms were all frosted with, on the walls, there was ice frosting on the walls, possibly because of condensation from us breathing in the room. And I believe that's when the alcohol abuse started. Parents started to drink a lot, and we were left in the house, in a cold house most of the time. And there was hardly any food because all they spent their monies that they got from welfare on booze and molasses and yeast to make their home brews. I believe my parents found it very difficult and unable to adapt to the new surrounding of a house because they were not used to that kind of a building that they were given, and feel like the government wanted them to stay in a house instead of a tent. There was a lot of alcohol abuse and there was a lot of violence that we had to see, and that was a lot of child neglect and child abuse, not sexually but physical abuse. My dad was mad all the time and was kind of, I guess he thought punishing us, like hitting us, was a punishment if we didn't listen, or he'd just get mad at something and take it all on us.
When I looked at myself in the mirror, I just felt really, really good.
I feel like I'm not putting on a mask every day.
Whether it's the illusion of protrusion or covering up a scar, we'll meet a medical tattoo artist who's empowering clients one session at a time. That's up next.
$5 bonus.
Tattoos are typically meant to be shown off and shared, but Sharon Crotty's work wants her work to blend in. The CBC's Daryl Roberts has more on the power of paramedical tattooing.
And then when we get going, I mean, it's kind of cool. So here's our trusty needles.
Shannon Crotty isn't your regular tattoo artist. Her work isn't meant to stand out. Often, it helps cover things up.
So a lot of the people that I see outside of the cosmetic tattooing or permanent makeup are here for scar management, have gone through potentially very traumatic events in their lives.
It's called paramedical tattooing. Her clients include people who have scars from self-harm, breast cancer survivors who've had mastectomies.
I'm using specialized inks that are cosmetic grade, different kinds of needles. I recreate an areola and a nipple, so I create that illusion of protrusion, I like to say.
Recently, Crotty got to try her hand at gender-affirming care.
Hey!
Hey, Gemma!
Good to see you.
How are you?
Good.
So we're just gonna have a little checkup today.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. Amazing. Great. Yeah, that's healed beautifully, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Gemma Hickey is a Newfoundland and Labrador activist. They got top surgery in 2017 as part of their transition.
So what happened in top surgery was the surgeon actually removed my nipples and then resized them and put them back on my chest. And it was incredible. And they look great, but I wanted them touched up.
Earlier this year, Hickey had their first tattoo session with Crotty.
I've been through different things in my life and suffered some trauma, sexual abuse, of course, and that gets in the way. And sometimes in terms of, having to deal with things and how you look at your body and this kind of thing. But, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I just felt really, really good. And, I felt like I was home.
I used to hide a lot. Not wanting to go out with friends. If I had a big pimple that would break out or anything like that, I would lie and say that I was sick, not feeling well, just so I wouldn't have to put my face out there.
Jessica Burke grew up with cystic acne and wore heavy makeup every day to cover the scars. But after a session with Crotty, she suddenly felt like she didn't have to hide.
Having my day-to-day where I'm not wearing makeup, I feel confident and I can just go out into the world. And then when I do put my face on for the weekend or like nighttime, then I feel different, I feel nice, and I actually feel like I'm not putting on a mask every day, because that's kind of what it was, wearing makeup all day, every day, a mask.
Sometimes it's different motions, so they're all different kind of techniques that are used, so very different maybe than your tattoo artist in a tattoo parlor, so to speak, versus this. It's a very different procedure, different process, different techniques.
Crotty says she's just getting started and wants to spread the word. Hickey and Burke say paramedical tattoos change their lives, even if no one else sees them.
It is so emotional, and to see someone have that reaction where they before felt so incomplete, or that part of them was literally gone. There are so many different things that I've treated, and they all bring me equal joy when it's that level of joy that I'm bringing to another person.
Daryl Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
PEI's had this already for several years, and the opinion polls are very strong.
Will Newfoundland and Labrador phase out smoking for the next generation? How a radical plan could work.
Hey Newfoundland, we're ready to break the ice. Berg! Coming to St. John's for 2 shows in June, it's the Debaters! The Debaters will be at the Holy Heart Theatre on June 17th and 18th with Facts and Funny. For details, visit cbc.ca/The Debaters.
The provincial government is proposing something that hasn't been done in Canada before. It's asking for feedback on banning tobacco products, but only for anyone born after a certain date. The aim would be to phase out smoking over a generation. Rob Cunningham is with the Canadian Cancer Society, and he's in Ottawa. So, Rob, first of all, can you explain what are they proposing here? How exactly would this work?
So, basically anyone born after a certain date would never be able to be sold tobacco products, and hopefully also vaping products. Both categories should be included. So anyone, for example, currently 15 years of age or younger, as they get older, they would never be able to be sold. So the minimum age currently in Newfoundland and Labrador for tobacco and cigarettes is 19. Over time, that would go up by 1 year each year. It would go up to 20, to 21, to 22, eventually 30, 31, 43, 44, so on. So that generation, would never be able to be sold, and all existing adult smokers would not be affected.
So explain the rationale. Why do it that way rather than just banning smoking altogether for everyone?
Well, today, if smoking was banned, it wouldn't work because of contraband. So many people are addicted, it simply wouldn't be feasible. But this would be to phase it in. And the overwhelming majority of smokers began as underage teenagers or preteens. And if we can prevent youth from starting, we're going to have a huge impact long term. One thing to note as part of this consultation, Newfoundland is looking at a minimum age 21 for both tobacco and cigarettes. PEI's had this already for several years, and the opinion polls are very strong. A February opinion poll in Atlantic Canada found that 80% of residents supported such a measure. So that's one of the other measures being put forward.
When you look at the idea of banning this for anyone, born after a certain date, I think what some people look at it as it's kind of arbitrary. So now you've got a group of people, they're never allowed to smoke. You've got another group of people that can smoke as much as they like. How do you address that sort of this dichotomy here where you've basically got two different groups of people and the idea that it may be unfair for that younger group to be able to not be able to do something that's perfectly fine for someone who's older?
I think it's the uniqueness of tobacco products. They were on the market before we knew the devastating health consequences. If it was possible to ban cigarettes, we would have done so decades ago. We can't because of the contraband. And so it's the addictive nature of the product, it's a leading preventable cause of disease and death in Newfoundland and Labrador, in Canada. And with something of this devastating result, we need to have innovative measures. And this is a type of innovative measure. And again, existing adult smokers will not be affected.
Now, we just legalized smoking cannabis. There are various experiments with decriminalizing drugs. So the overall trend has been the opposite direction. We've heard the message that, bans don't work. So why do you think it would be different if we decide to essentially ban smoking for some people?
Well, we've made great progress to reduce smoking. In Canada, in 1965, it was 50%. The most recent data for Canada, it's down to 11.6%, a little bit higher in Newfoundland and Labrador. Yes, the tobacco industry is going to oppose it, but we're seeing more governments internationally look at this. In New Zealand, it was initially adopted and then repealed by a new government. In Britain, there's all-party support for this. There was a bill that was advancing through Parliament when the election was called. That's going to come back. So it's getting greater international attention. People really want to address the tobacco issue to get to the objective we have of under 5% tobacco use by the year 2035. And whatever we can do, we should be examining, and the government is to be commended for this consultation.
They are consulting. What would your message be to the provincial government on this?
Our message is that they should have minimum age 21 as a start. They should do the tobacco-free generation, but they should be doing other measures as well as part of a comprehensive strategy. More can be done with respect to controlling tobacco industry promotion, with respect to more smoke-free outdoor spaces with respect to where tobacco can be sold.
Well, thanks so much for joining me and sharing your perspective on this.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
The financially troubled company that owns the Just for Laughs Comedy Festival is selling off some of its assets.
Good evening, everyone. Or as the French say, good evening.
A Quebec City-based company called Comedy Ha is making the purchase for an undisclosed amount. Comedy Ha says it wants to be a major actor in comedy. The company has a television streaming service, and it intends to develop festivals and live shows. A First Nation in Northern Ontario is suing the federal and provincial governments over mercury contamination in a river flowing through its territory. Grassy Narrows First Nation says community members could not practice their rights to safely fish.
The people of Grassy Narrows have suffered enough. The future children, the grandchildren that are coming behind us when I'm long gone, we want a good future for them.
The lawsuit claims the governments allowed the river to be contaminated, then failed to address the problem while authorizing harmful industrial activities. Community leaders say the matter would have been handled differently if another segment of the population had been affected. The lawsuit is seeking several measures, including the order that the governments protect the river and Grassy Narrows territory. On Thursday, many of the nations whose troops fought in the Second World War will mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. On June 6, 1944, thousands of Allied soldiers, including 14,000 Canadians, stormed the beaches in Normandy. The invasion marked the beginning of the end of the war in Europe. CBC's Julia Wong is in France and met some of Canada's vets who've returned to mark the solemn anniversary.
I'm in front of the Juno Beach Centre, where earlier today a group of Canadian World War II veterans, including a handful who were here on D-Day, arrived to much fanfare. Now, a crowd gathered as these veterans were taken off a bus before they were brought inside the centre, some people lining up to shake their hands. Now, many of them seem to be in awe of these veterans, the youngest of whom are in their late 90s. Now, for many people, the 80th anniversary of D-Day is particularly poignant, especially as there are fewer and fewer veterans with every passing year. The veterans themselves had this to say about being in Normandy.
It's important for the obvious reason that I lost friends as a result of D-Day. And I've been here twice before to pay my respects. This will be the last time. It's time for me to pack it in.
This will be one of the last events where we're going to have veterans that are with us. So of course it makes it even that much more special.
Now, the Juno Beach Centre has been a hive of activity. Preparations are in full swing for the commemorations that will take place later this week. As you can see, a stage has been set up behind me and a couple viewing areas have been set up for the public. This one over here for students, another one over there for the general public. And I want to draw your attention to this area right over here. This is the VIP area. This is where veterans will be sitting. This is where dignitaries, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that's where he will be sitting. And over the last few days, we've seen more and more Canadians arrive here. And some of them have told us that they've made it a point to be here for this anniversary.
I suppose it's a bit of a pilgrimage to honor them and to thank them for their service and to remember everything that they've done for our country.
It's really amazing to be here and to see where those who've gone before and who've given their lives before have actually walked these beaches.
A row of small Canadian flags has been planted on Juno Beach to honor the sacrifices that were made here, the Canadians who stormed this particular landing beach. And everywhere you go in this region, you see Canadian flags on streets, in storefronts, a reminder of that special connection between France and Canada. Julia Wong, CBC News, Juno Beach, France.
Okay, so Ashley, during your last forecast, I don't know if you realized it, but you had a little Freudian slip.
Oh.
You said this is typical weather for January.
Oh, January, I said.
It could also be, we've had some Januaries that were warmer than this and nicer than this.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely have.
But at the same time, it feels like, you know, you can't expect it. Like there have been plenty of Junes into July that we've had to deal with the rain, drizzle, and lots of fog. So our memories are just short. We block it out. It's, you know, repress the trauma.
Yeah, definitely do. Yeah, it's all about where the wind is blowing. And, you know, we get some of that warmer air moving over the ocean and we're socked in fog for a little while. It looks like it's going to stay like that for a little bit. Let's take a look at what's going on. As we head into Thursday morning, we might see a bit of some relief through the afternoon on Thursday. If the winds shift, this is all still a little bit up in the air. But we may see a bit of relief Thursday afternoon, at least from the rain anyway, in the east. Central, west coast, and parts of the northern peninsula, and even along the Strait and southeastern Labrador, you're still going to see that onshore flow with the potential for some showers through the day. Otherwise, the rest of the big land looking stunning again. 25, 26 degrees is your daytime highs, even teens and 20s as you head towards the coast as well with some sunshine. But yeah, temperatures should rebound a little bit. I do have that sun icon in there. It may be, I don't know, we'll see what happens. But I have the sun icon in there for you on Thursday. 13 degrees will be the daytime high, it looks like. Otherwise, teens really across the board. 15 degrees in Corner Brook. As we head into Friday, this is when we're starting to see that area of low pressure move more over the island. And that should change the winds to more southerly. So if we are going to see some relief from that fog, this will be it. This will be the chance. And also the potential to see some skies clearing, maybe not till later in the day, but potentially before sunset. We could see some change. And that's, again, because of the wind's more southerly flow. And I'm, again, talking about the Avalon and eastern Newfoundland. Central, west coast, still looking at that chance of some showers through the day. And same thing for southeastern portions of Labrador as well. Daytime highs should, again, reach the teens, about 14 degrees in St. John's, 16 through central. West coast a tad warmer than that. And again, another beautiful day up across Labrador, 26 degrees with plenty of sunshine. And as you head towards the coast, 22 degrees in Cartwright through your afternoon. Long range forecast, we're seeing temperatures in the double digits, just barely. Sunday is a little bit up in the air. Now temperatures should warm up. There is a chance we could see some sun on Sunday too, but for now I'm keeping it as a more rainy solution. And as we get closer, we'll nail that one down. But overnight lows still between 7 and 8 degrees. Now for central Newfoundland, you're looking at the chance of showers, but also some peaks of sun in the mix. Temperatures slowly climbing to about 20 degrees by the time we end out the week. And then for western Newfoundland, more dry solution. The chance of some lots of sunshine, I should say, 19 to 21 degrees through the day. And then for Labrador, that heat will continue. Some dry conditions right through the next 5-day forecast. 29 degrees by Saturday, a bit of relief from that heat. Well, from the 29 degrees on Sunday down to about 23, but beautiful stretch of weather in western Labrador, 25, 24 degrees. So beautiful. Now, tulips are finally starting to open. They're wet at the moment, but they're trying. And this is a shot of some wet tulips in the rain on Gower Street. Marie shared this great shot with us. And if you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, you can send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I would love to trade places with anyone in Labrador who is looking for relief from the heat. Good news, come to St. John's. I will come up and maybe I can host the show from Labrador West for the rest of the week. Something that would be amazing because those temperatures, just a little bit of sunshine. That's all we need.
It is all we need. And when that sun finally does come out, everything's going to be nice and green.
Oh, yes. Not a lack of moisture.
No.
Well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching.
Good night.